The girl you see now on the screens was called Sarah Payne. She was born on October 3, 1991. Sarah lived with her parents Michael and Sarah Payne, two older brothers and a younger sister. Her home was in Jersey, a few hours' drive from her father's parents' house, where this story actually took place. Other than family, there wasn't much to say about Sarah, since the girl was only 8 years old at the time of the incident. The family was quite organized in relation to raising their children. Sarah's mother worked in a bar during the day, and her father at night. In the morning, Sarah took the girls with her to work, and when they returned home after lunch, their father was no longer sleeping, so everyone could spend time together. July 1, 2000 was a very ordinary day. The girls went to work with their mother, and when they returned after lunch they began to pack their bags together to go to their grandparents'. Their house was in a very beautiful place, on the Kingston Gorse coast. The place was quite calm. There was plenty of space to play. Everything was quiet and seemed ideal for a weekend away with the kids. It seemed safe enough. But, unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. On that first day of July, after lunch, the whole family decided to walk along the beach, chat and just have a good time. A couple of hours later, grandfather wanted to visit the city. It is clear that the older sons wanted to go for a walk separately, but they had to stay and look after their younger sisters, since they were responsible for them. And despite the fact that they always took good care of Sarah and Charlotte, the second sister, this time the unexpected happened. The adults decided to go hang out at a local bar while the kids went to play. Let me remind you that there were 4 of them, 2 boys aged 11 to 13, 6-year-old Charlotte and Sarah, who is the victim in this story. All this time the children were playing in the cornfield, until Sarah suddenly decided that it would be better to return home. This happens at 8 p.m. She heads towards the house, which was only a few meters away, but she never reaches it. The brothers said that they were distracted only for a second, and after a moment the younger sister was no longer in sight. The parents returned and realized that Sarah was gone. The brothers said that they did not know where she could be. As a result, the family calls the police. The officers arrive immediately since they were talking about an 8-year-old child. She could have been lost in the forest, in the field, she could still be alive, but very scared, so it was necessary to find her immediately, but this was just a theory. Despite the fact that the family already knew that something bad had happened. Unfortunately, she was not found that night, and she was not found the next day either. On July 2nd, a full-fledged search began and an investigation was launched. Within 48 hours of Sarah's disappearance, a full-scale search operation began. The family gave interviews, spoke to the press, and also showed a school photo of the girl. Because there were few houses and cars there were few witnesses. The only thing that could be done was to hang photographs of Sarah everywhere, talk about her on TV, so that people could recognize Sarah if something happened. In addition, the parents wanted to evoke sympathy from the audience and especially from the man who kidnapped the girl, so that he would return her. But this, of course, did not happen. The girl's mother, also named Sarah, was another key figure in the case. She did not let anyone forget about her daughter for a minute, but all the efforts of the family did not prevent the one who kidnapped Sarah from eventually killing her. On July 17th of the same year, 24 kilometers from Kingston Gorse, where the girl disappeared in a field, her body was found, and from that day the investigation into the murder of Sarah Payne began. During numerous interrogations, the brothers said that that day they did not take their eyes off their sister until she herself disappeared. It was an instant, a few seconds, that changed the family's life forever. One of the brothers followed Sarah as she left so as not to leave her alone, but his younger sister Charlotte hits and falls at that very moment. He turns around for a second and Sarah suddenly disappears. Something happened the moment the brothers turned their backs, and it happened so quickly that they couldn't stop it. That is, the person who kidnapped Sarah planned all this, followed her for some time and most likely escaped in a car, so the brothers were asked if they saw anything suspicious. The brother who accompanied Sarah said that he saw two cars on the street that ran through this cornfield. One was a car and the other was a white van. What was suspicious was that a man was looking at them from a white van and smiling, and after he smiled at the boy, he quickly drove away. Whoever the police looked at when searching for possible suspects was, of course, a list of child molesters who were in the area. Among these people, the police recognized a man named Roy Whiting, a pedophile who lived only 8 kilometers from Sarah's grandparents' house. He owned a white van and had previously been jailed for similar offenses. Speaking of Roy Whiting, he didn't have a very happy childhood. There were many brothers and parents who were not interested in him, and he also had a difficult school period. After studying, he led an ordinary life, worked as a mechanic, dated a girl, and lived in his hometown. However, Roy Whiting had one little secret: he began to like little girls, so much that it turned into an addiction. He tracked them down and waited. He was a real maniac, looking for his victims while driving around in a white van, which he bought precisely for this purpose. In 1995, Roy finally achieved what he wanted. He kidnapped one girl, abused her and got rid of the van so as not to arouse suspicion. But in the end, the police managed to find the car and arrest the culprit. But due to the fact that Roy did not kill her, he was given a short prison sentence. He was sentenced to only 4 years, of which he served only 2 years. During the first diagnosis with the doctor, he said that this only happened once and would never happen again, and that he was not a maniac at all, but it all seemed ridiculous for many reasons. It is unclear who carried out this diagnosis, but it was safe to say that the specialist behaved very negligently, because Roy planned it. Bought a van to chase girls and ended up doing it again. Despite the fact that Roy was still dangerous, he was released, but at least he was recorded on the sex offenders register. Roy Whiting was first questioned a day after Sarah disappeared. The first time the police came to this man, he was not at home, and they waited for him for 5 hours and were finally able to ask where he had been all this time. These were just formalities, as the man was not immediately charged with anything, but some time after the police left his house, Roy went out to his van again, but the police waiting for him there arrested the man before he left. Because if a person runs away immediately after talking with the police, it looks suspicious. Roy Whiting spent 2 days in custody, but since there was no evidence that he was guilty, he was released on bail. Police, however, found among his personal belongings a receipt from a gas station on Route 24, not far from the area where one of Sarah's shoes was found. This check also contradicted Roy's testimony that he was at the amusement park at 5:30 p.m. and then returned to his apartment at 9:30 p.m., when Sarah was already missing. The check confirmed that he was not at home and that he and his van were in a completely different place. On July 20th, Sarah's shoe is found, and on July 23rd, Roy steals the car in which he was detained by the police for violating traffic rules, and Roy is in custody until September 27, 2000. After which he admits his guilt in the hijacking and will be arrested for 22 months. While Roy was in prison for car theft, the police were finally able to examine the Fiat Ducat van he bought on July 23, 2000. And on February 6, 2001, after an extensive police investigation, Whiting was charged with the kidnapping and murder of Sarah Payne. The trial began with several pieces of evidence that pointed to him committing the crime. Whiting did not admit his guilt or the credibility of any of the evidence and was in custody until the start of his trial on November 14, 2001. Because he was still in prison for car theft when he was due to be released, Roy remained in prison as he awaited his trial. This prevented other victims from escaping or reoffending. On November 14, a trial was held. Sarah Payne's older brother acted as a witness and confirmed that he had seen a suspicious man with yellowish teeth. The trial dragged on a little because the guy pointed to another person during the identification parade, but Sarah's shoe, which was found along the highway, turned out to be one of the most important pieces of evidence in her case. An examination showed that they contained fibers from the Whiting van. Additionally, a strand of white hair was found inside the van and a DNA test identified the hair as Sarah's. On December 12, 2001, after a 4-week trial, Whiting was convicted of Sarah's kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. During the trial they tried not to mention the man's past, since he had already been convicted of a similar crime and if it had reached the press. Roy could have appealed based on the fact that he was judged on the basis of previous cases. From that moment on, they began to talk about public access to lists of sexual predators for the sake of maintaining the safety of the population. On the 24th of November 2002, the Home Secretary ordered that Roy Whiting serve a minimum 50-year prison sentence. Over the years, Whiting tried to be released early. The first time he appealed was in 2004, and as a result his sentence was changed from 50 years to 40. Sarah's family was understandably very disappointed with this decision, as was the public, since Roy could have been released at 82 and repeated his crime. After this incident, the so-called Sarah's Law was passed, which provided controlled access to the sex offender registry, and in the future, the number of such viruses should be reduced. Help policy prevent contact with a potential abuser and save lives. Sarah's mother said that such a law could save her daughter's life. Sarah's parents received compensation of £11,000, which made no difference to them. In this video it can be concluded that the family solves problems despite the pain caused. They were a close-knit family, but Sarah's father was never able to cope with the loss of his daughter, and at the age of 45 he committed suicide in his own home. On August 4, 2002, Whiting was attacked with a knife as he went to get boiling water in prison. In 2011, Whiting was attacked again, this time stabbed in the eye. Such attacks were repeated several more times, which suggests that the prisoners with whom Whiting is in prison did not like him and were opposed to him. As a result, justice prevailed, the culprit was punished, the case was solved, and the parents were at least able to obtain the body of their daughter to bury her, which is not always possible to do in such crimes. Write your opinion in the comments. Do you think Roy Whiting received a justified sentence, or could the punishment be made a little more cruel? Let's discuss this in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.